I know to begin with it sounds like an incredibly stupid question, but I also know if you decided to watch the video, first of all thank you, second of all you know exactly what I'm talking about, as I am asking this question especially in, well, now, today, when anime and manga is more popular, more mainstream than it has ever been. It's so big now that you have celebrities unashamedly discussing it, major collabs, anime fans are no longer viewed as sweaty basement dwellers with posters of girls with big eyes and big other parts on their walls. For the most part, at least, I don't know. Anyway, what I'm saying is that there's a lot of good that comes with the popularity, but at the same time, if I was to sum it up, it also makes you think about why, not justify, but think about why people gatekeep stuff, if you know what I mean. Because I made a video a while back about Demon Slayer, which is literally the perfect place to start when addressing the question in the title, and the title of that other video I made was the duality of popularity. And with the Infinity Castle movie being released, breaking records and absolutely walking over some of the biggest IPs in the world, that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video. So Demon Slayer has like the highest of peaks of any anime or manga in terms of commercial success. There was the 1 year where it hit over 80 million volumes sold in a single year, breaking the previous record held by One Piece. And when we're talking about figures in the tens of millions, that is a pretty big jump. Then the first movie breaks records, the anime goes strong for another 3 seasons, and now this movie, which at this point in time has made $650 million while becoming the most successful overseas movie in the US box office domestically ever. So there's, a lot of money has been made over the past few years, and with that money has come a lot of new fans, and obviously what I'm about to say next does not apply to all of those people, but a sizable chunk of them aren't going to venture too far from Demon Slayer and will only consume the biggest names of the modern day as well, I should say. I want to rule out stories like the big 3, and the reason for that is for a lot of people, well everyone actually, already has a lot going on in their lives, so it's not like they aren't branching out to other series purely out of spite or something. It's just there's a lot going on. Maybe I have other interests that have been embedded in my life very deeply across my years of existence, such as sports, art, gaming, fitness, and so on, and I would rather dedicate my time to those than watching anime, which is fair, and I'm realizing I'm kind of going off track, but anyway, we have this massive influx in people, a huge new audience, and with that audience comes a ton of opinions, and some of those new fans may have big audiences of their own, so their words might have a lot of sway on some very impressionable minds. I am thinking of one very specific example right now, which is when Ninja tweeted Demon Slayer is by far the best anime out there. First of all, it's an important detail that he probably knew what he was doing when he decided to tweet this, but whether he did or not, it was guaranteed to generate noise. But what I want to mention first is my issue with such an opinion, which isn't the opinion itself per se, but it's when they use the wrong word, a lexical error, and I made a video on this as well because it gets on my nerves. Your favorite, the best, the greatest, you used one but you meant one of the others, please learn the difference, and so many arguments and misunderstandings can be avoided. But we say everyone's opinion is valid given a few caveats, like it's not racist or genocidal. So is an opinion like Ninja's valid? Well, yes, of course it is, because at the end of the day it's not that deep, you know. But to link it back to the question in the title, the issue comes in with the responses and subsequent arguments that follow such an opinion, because when we are talking about something as popular as Demon Slayer in this case, all of a sudden being a big fan of it is a negative. It becomes an insult to you. You're a Demon Slayer fan, filthy casual. I don't say that myself for what it's worth, but for whatever reason, being a fan of it when the story itself has done nothing to offend anyone, when you have done nothing to offend anyone, still somehow offends some people. And I have the perfect analogy for this. I'm a football fan and I support Real Madrid, and I get the Glory Hunter comments all the time because they're the biggest team in the history of the sport, but I've supported them since I was a kid, and it was expected as I grew up I would choose a new team, an English team at least, if not my local team. And I thought, why? For the record, of course, being a football fan, I'm not just going to watch the team I support. I watch my local team, I watch teams and matches from across Europe's top 5 leagues, the European competitions, the lower leagues of English football. You know, there's no way someone could call themselves a football fan if they just watch that one team they support. support. The same way someone's not really an anime fan if Demon Slayer is the only anime they've watched. I'm also not saying Demon Slayer and Real Madrid are equivalents in their respective worlds, cause Madrid's equivalent would be something like Dragon Ball because of its history. And anyway, I always used to think, does the team I support or the team that anyone else supports, when it's not a team from their own nation, someone you don't know nor will you ever interact with, why does their choice of team cause you so much pain? Why does my enjoyment in this situation hurt you? And that's where we can bring it back to anime. Why does my opinion on what my favorite anime is hurt you? Maybe because of what some guy on the other side of the world who I don't even know exists said, who just also happens to like the same series? Come on, that's a bit ridiculous. And another series I can bring up here, and a more recent example at that, is Solo Leveling. I had read it before the anime was announced, and I remember wishing that the adaptation would do the story's art justice, because the art is incredible, and if it was done right it would become huge. Then it came out and it became huge, and with the second season, maybe it was like this before, but when the second season aired, it definitely had become one of those few series that even non-anime watchers would hear about and would watch, like a Demon Slayer or a Jujutsu Kaisen. But the same thing happened where it had become so popular that it became an issue for some people. And I'm not saying that the critiques of either story were invalid. Solo Leveling isn't that deep of a narrative. Demon Slayer, although it has its themes, isn't too complex either. But it's also obvious why they did get that level of attention, because first and foremost, they look incredible, and for most people that's enough, but for others maybe they believe it's unfair that some adaptations get this level of care while other arguably better stories don't. Cause I do remember during and shortly after season 2 of Solo Leveling, there were a lot of people commenting on just how simple the story was and how repetitive it was, and even if it wasn't explicitly stated, you feel there were undertones, microaggressions maybe, but sometimes it was explicitly stated. People would think less of you if you enjoyed Solo Leveling. Again, it's kind of pointless to care that much about someone else's anime taste. So to compare that with another manhwa adaptation that came out recently, but one that was treated horribly and was not at all brought to life as well as Solo Leveling was, is The Beginning After the End, which is another very popular manhwa, one of the most popular to be completely honest, but the anime was a travesty. There was barely any animation at all, barely any movement, the art looked flat. The only reason I sat through the entire season was because I already knew the story and I loved the story, so I suffered through it. And since then I haven't personally noticed any influx in readers or in its community, and you can see why. And the anime has kind of been forgotten about, left in the dust, and everyone's moved on. The fans of the story before are still fans, and life moves forward. No new fans with maybe controversial opinions, and no arguments as a result of those controversial opinions. It's still very popular, but it just didn't become super popular, you know. And talking about animation, let's bring in One Punch Man, because the reception to the trailers and first episode of season 3 were another one of the reasons why I decided to make this video. Because One Punch Man is very big. Many say it's the perfect gateway into anime. It's one of those series in the 2010s which did attract a ton of new eyes, but those new eyes aren't the point anymore, because with the third season, although having just begun, the opinion is already very mixed. Some people saying it's already dead in the water, while others are saying it's only a dialogue episode, let's wait until the actual fights. When a series gets big enough, and this is literally now any series with a big fan base, they will end up butting heads with each other. There's so many people part of its community that there's bound to be multiple thoughts shared by multiple people that don't align. So it isn't only outsiders looking in who cause trouble for the fans, it's also their fellow fans who can also create some drama between them. Now you may be thinking, isn't that just a casual discussion, a casual disagreement? Yes, because that's the thing, most people know where the line is and stay respectful, while others do not, because they get so passionate about this sort of thing, either defending their beloved series or for some reason trying to bring it down, that they do cross the line and there is no longer any respect to be found. I think the animation was stale, the art looked great, and I am also not going to judge until the entire season has aired, although I would prefer if we avoided a Blue Lock season 2 situation where only the final episode had that stellar animation. So here is one more example from outside of anime manga, this time with Avatar, the James Cameron one, the Big Blue People, most successful movie ever, the sequel, one of the most successful movies ever. A lot of people like to talk down on Avatar, how it's not had any cultural impact, it's boring, and to begin with, again, they sound like regular complaints, but some people get really worked up about it, like they believe the success of it wasn't warranted. It wasn't deserved. We know why it succeeded, because like the others, it's visuals, and it makes me think if they didn't become as popular as they did, then there's no way many of these people would have had these problems, to this extent at least. Again, they are not wrong to think what they think, but is the issue that it's boring, or is the issue that it made so much money despite it being, quote, boring? Is it really that big of a deal to you? However, there is still a whole other side to this discussion where you can question whether these stories deserve the success they were able to find, but I've also found a big point of discussion on the film and TV side of social media is that, is the bigger issue that the general audience is more often consuming these less narratively rich stories rather than others with larger narratives, deeper themes, more important lessons? Because at the end of the day, film and TV are a way to send a message and to teach not just kids, but to teach anyone. And I should say, again, I always try to preface what I say, since each point I make doesn't apply to everything, you know. Each of the stories I've mentioned, regardless of the point I was trying to make when I mentioned them, Demon Slayer, Solo Leveling, Avatar, and so on, each of them have a point they are trying to get across, a message that they want us to take with us after the ending is playing or the credits roll as well. But also back to the point of teaching, 9 times out of 10, when these fans are arguing, I don't think they're going to be arguing about the philosophical idea of what lessons people should take away from their media. So the conclusion I have come to is that, well, I kind of branched out from the original question, but for that original question, there is no such thing as too popular for a story, that is, in my opinion, and I have already said it in the video, it's not that big of a deal. Who really cares what someone else thinks is the best or their favorite? Well, you can care up to a point, but go beyond that point and you're doing too much. To each their own, and that's okay.